What is up, everybody? Brian Mendler back in your life on this Monday, December 2nd, 2019. And I am super excited today to be joined by, well, there are so many different titles that I could give you. So I'm going to start with North Dakota State Teacher of the Year. How about one of my really good friends, a wife, a mom, an amazing third grade teacher. Kayla Dornfield joins me. Kayla, it's so great to see you.
Thank you for having me. And I was excited before we started recording, and after hearing that intro, I'm jacked up.
The in-ring announcer from the UFC. So his name is Bruce Buffer. I'm a huge UFC fan. I've been a UFC fan. I actually think it's really, I know some people might disagree with me, but I think it's actually healthy for kids to have a really aggressive kids to have a safe place to unload their aggression without hurting
Mhm,
other people. So I became a
mhm,
huge fan of the UFC, and I like that there's a controlled environment to do that. And
mhm.
so, yeah, I got in touch with Bruce Buffer and he went out and recorded an intro for me for my podcast. So, pretty cool, isn't it?
I feel like when I start mine, even though I have nothing to do with UFC and I don't know him, I probably need it.
It gets you excited. It gets you excited.
Yes.
And so, you and I, we've been trying to catch up for a while now. Both of us really busy, a lot going on. So, I just wanted to catch up and see how your life's going. So, last I saw you, we actually met for the first time in person at What Great Educators Do Differently, probably a couple years ago now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And since that time, so when I met you, you were Kayla Delzer. Now you're Kayla
Mhm.
Dornfeld. So you've gotten married, correct?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you.
And
April 12th, we got married.
and two stepkids, correct?
We're stepkids, so I'm learning, they call me their bonus mom. I'm learning how to be a bonus mom and be a wife and sort of do all of the things. And it has been a really great adventure.
Yeah, you're enjoying. I dated a woman one time that had two kids. It didn't work out, but it was great. I was a huge fan of being like an extra dad. It was cool because I would hang out with the kids and then they would go to their like parent for a little while, and I'm
Yeah.
like, cool, they're out of here for a little bit. It was actually pretty cool. So third grade, yes. Are you teaching? What are you teaching right now? You're teaching third or second?
Third grade. Third grade. So you're right. I've done second grade and I've done third grade. So this year I am doing third grade again. This is my fourth year of third grade and loving it. The year is cruising by, which I feel like it always does. But like, boom, it's Thanksgiving, Christmas. The year's, I mean, it's just flying by. So it's
You
going
know,
really well.
you're obviously one of the pioneers in flex seating, and I actually last night was taking a little time. I watched your TED talk, which is amazing, and from 4 years ago, and it
Mhm.
was which is by the way has 330,000 views on YouTube. So if you guys haven't seen that, check it out. But you're really at the time introducing a concept that wasn't
Mhm.
really out there. I mean, it's much, much more out there today. But like when you flash in that presentation to the picture of your classroom, you show the traditional classroom and then you show a picture
Mhm.
of your classroom. It's just
Mhm.
amazing, the transformation. So, how did you come up with that? And how did you decide that was something that you wanted to innovate?
Oh my gosh. So I laugh because I actually, when I need to get work done, so I have an awesome home office that I'm in recording with you this morning. But before I had this home and this office, when I had to get work done, I would just go to our Fargo Starbucks. And so when I was getting ready to do the TED Talk and we were working through the script and all the practicing, rehearsing, I would actually go to the Starbucks to get my work done because it's the only place I could be productive. And I kept going back there and going back there. And eventually I realized like there's a lot of people who are here who are working and we are all here being productive. And I thought, like, what is it about it that's making it productive for us? And I noticed what they have on the walls, what the walls look like, the music that they play, the seating that they offer. And I thought, like, why couldn't I do this with 8 year olds? Why couldn't this be beneficial? And then I started thinking about those kids who, the kids who you might typically think like, oh, they are the ones who are getting bored and then they're distracting other kids, or they might just need to be standing and working, or they might need a ball chair, or they might need to just have the freedom to not be sitting in a desk all day. And so I went to my principal that year and I just said, so that was in the summer. I went to him in the fall and I said, I want to try this thing. where I just don't have assigned seats, and I want to have just different options that kids can choose after I assign their work. Wherever they work the best, I want them to be able to do that. And he's like, well, what research do you have on this? And I said, well, truthfully, I've just been working at Starbucks and that's it. So
My
he,
favorite kind of research, I have to tell
yeah,
you. There's no better kind of
yeah,
research than that.
like, so he just jumped in with me. He said yes. And I thought like by October, like Halloween, if it was not working, like I would just go back. And it just kept working. And then the local newspaper came out. They're called the Fargo Forum. And if you end up in the Fargo Forum, like we were on the front page of the Fargo Forum, that's like being on the front page of North Dakota, really. And
Right.
so that happened. And then it just kind of exploded. Edutopia asked me to write for them, and that piece has millions of views. EdSurge, I was writing a column at the time, so I wrote there. And then just multiple podcast interviews, writing about it, sharing about it. There's a company called the Global 100 out of Finland, actually, Helsinki, and it got nominated for the top 100 innovations in the world in 2017, and it won. And it got nominated again the next year, and it won. And so it's not just being done now in North Dakota, it's being done around the United States. And sure, when you go visit schools, you can see classrooms that are giving kids choices.
So the first time that you did it, so you go to your principal and you're like, listen, I got this idea. I've been sitting at
Yeah.
Starbucks. I enjoy working there. Other people do. Did you at that moment, did you have traditional desks in your classroom? Like, did you have to replace desks? And how did you do that? Did you pay for stuff yourself? How did you find the right stuff? How does somebody go about even just getting started
Great
on this if
question.
they don't know?
Okay, so when I first went to him, we actually had tables with regular chairs, and that's what we had. So I honestly just said, like, can we find some place to store 30 chairs? Like, and then I will bring in the other stuff. And so I found some ball chairs. I found some crate seats. Standing table takes nothing. Like you just let kids stand and work. So that's really easy. And so I just kind of got thrifty. I got kind of scrappy. My brother, one summer, my brother was out doing rummage sale things, and he sent me a picture. By the way, he's in the technology world. He has nothing to do with education. He sent me a picture of some like galvanized metal bar stools, and he's just said, are those flexible seating? And I said, yes, those are flexible seating, and they're like $3 each. And so I slowly but surely just started getting things. And then when we were in the oldest school in the state. No joke, it was built in 1924. We moved to the new school 3 years ago now. We just bought lots of new things for every classroom because we moved to the new school and we needed new things. And so some of it has been purchased by the school, some of it has just been purchased by me. And you just make it work. It's just what you do.
I mean, really, everything is flex seating, right? I mean, it's such a great look. I mean, I have severe ADHD, and as a kid, there's no question that was the hardest thing for me was sitting still in my seat. It was nonstop. Brian, sit down,
Mhm.
Brian, and I would just up, down, go get sharpen my pencil, come back, like. And then as you're going to sharpen your pencil, bump into somebody, and then they get annoyed at you, and then it just led to so many problems in general. The
Yeah.
severe ADHD, and I think about this concept and having it back then and just and it's just how it should
Oh,
be. Like, why wouldn't it be this way? What are the downsides? So when you go in and you talk about this and you have people that
mhm,
are kind of like, I don't know,
mhm.
what's the pushback that you hear or that you see?
A few different things. First is I think whenever you're trying something new or you're changing something, it can be considered hard, definitely considered scary. One of my favorite quotes is by Annie Downs, and she talks about how brave people don't stop hearing the whispers of fear. They hear the whispers, but they take action anyways. And I think like it has a lot to do with just doing it and knowing that it might be hard or you might be afraid right away, but not letting that stop you, especially when you know it's going to benefit your kids. I think because as teachers, we're the gatekeepers for everything that happens in our classrooms. And so if we just didn't do anything that might be new or hard or scary or a change, like we would just be stagnant forever. And so
Yeah.
I think like something I repeat throughout the day and whenever I give keynotes, even before I get on stage, is I just say, this is not about me. This is not about me. And keeping the focus on what it needs to be. This isn't about me. And so that has been really a big thing, I think, when it comes to kind of reframing my mind about it. But I think the fear is if I don't have the seating chart, how will I control where certain kids sit and where other kids don't sit? And what we do is we make flexible seating norms. And so we together, right, what do we need to be successful with this? Because not all classrooms look like this. And this is honestly such a privilege to have this. And so if you like it, how can we make sure that we're keeping it, and being respectful of each other, because we're sharing the space just like you do when you go to Starbucks, right? Or any restaurant, really. And so there's just a lot that goes into the norms and making sure they understand what's expected and that the teacher can move them if she needs to. And sometimes that might happen if you have kids who aren't being productive or they are arguing about a seat. That is like, for me, they know if they're arguing about a seat, neither of them are going to sit there. Like that is just, that's common decency as adults in the world. So we do a lot of rock, paper, scissors,
Yeah,
and
right.
whoever wins gets the seat. And if you lose, you don't even give a stinky face to that other person because that's poor sportsmanship too. And I kind of use an example. I model like when I go to Starbucks, I love to sit. There's like a certain place I love to go. Just like at church, we always sit in a certain spot, right? But at Starbucks, I sit on this one comfy, like lazy boy chair kind of that I sink into, and there's a coffee table in front of me where I can put out all my laptop, my iPad, my papers, everything, my journals. And if someone else is sitting there, I'm not going to go over them and tell them like I need to be sitting here today. Or if both of us get to the same seat at the same time, we're both going to offer that seat to the other person. We're not going to fight about who gets to sit there. And so I think modeling what you expect at every different location, having super high expectations, because it is a privilege, and then just giving tons of grace, like so much grace, because these kids haven't experienced this before. They don't know what they're doing. They've only been told you sit best with, you can have these kids around you, but these kids are not going to be around you. Your desk is facing this way. They don't know. And so just giving so
Yeah.
much grace.
Because I would think the one thing that I hear that I would think is the structure of it. And you said the word control
Mm-hmm.
earlier, and I think that's really hard for some people to give up. But I think it's the wrong way to look at it. I think you're actually
Yeah,
in more control probably when you do it this way
100%.
because you're really having kids make a lot more decisions, which is actually the ultimate goal in all aspects of school, right? The ultimate goal is to get kids to make decisions for themselves without you having to constantly tell them everything. And so now if you have all these different choices, they can kind of go about their day doing that, and you can kind of be the guide looking out for where the problems are and then really working closely with those couple of kids. And I think you would also
Mhm.
probably teach negotiation here too, right? This is another place where you can teach negotiation. Like, okay, well, if I can have that seat for 10 minutes and you can have it for 10 minutes after that. No, I want it for 20 minutes. Okay, well, how about if I give it for you 20 minutes and then you give it to me for 15 minutes? And you can kind of go
Mhm.
back and forth, which I think is a really great skill to teach kids that's not often
Mhm.
taught enough in a lot of schools.
Mhm. 100%. Turn taking and sharing, huge, totally huge. And also, I think them just being smart about where they're sitting. Am I sitting there because my friend is sitting there? Am I sitting there because I can do my best learning here and I can be productive here? Like, productive is a word that we use all of the time, in our room. And like you said, like I've actually found the more control that I give up, the more control I get back. The more
Yes.
power I'm willing to let go of, truly, the more control and power in my classroom I have. And one of the myths I love to debunk is that flexible seating means a lack of structure. And I even think like my husband and I were on our honeymoon, and there were some teachers who were at the pool around where we were, and um, somehow he brought up flexible seating, and one of the teachers was like, "Oh, my kid could just not do that because they need more structure than that." And Dan was like, "Let me tell him." And I'm like, "Nope." And we just swam away. I'm like, "You don't have to show up to every fight you're invited to. Like, we're not doing this right now." But it is such a myth that it doesn't have structure. I think my classroom has more structure now than ever before. So I think it might be scary, but remember to just not let scary stuff stop you in your tracks, not only in your classroom, but in your life, and just see what can happen. It just opens so many doors.
I feel the same way when people ask me about power struggles. one of the strategies that I give to diffuse power struggles, one of my favorite strategies is just to agree with the kid, right? So like when a kid is really, Mr. Mendler, you're a jerk, correct? And I could be a bigger one, like, would you like to see? Or Mr. Mendler, you're dumb. I mean, obviously I picked this career, did I not, for like 45 grand a year to be yelled at by you? You know what I mean? Like, tell me something I didn't know, kid, right? Like, there's no better diffuser in the world than agreeing. But some teachers see that and they're like, well, I can never do that because how would that make me look? And I'm like, it actually makes you look stronger. It makes you look like you have more control. It makes you look like you don't allow that kid to get to you, which is really the
Mhm.
ultimate goal. I love that you did that. Where'd you go on your honeymoon, by the way?
Punta Cana. So it
Nice.
was pretty awesome. Yep, it was pretty great. We
How
loved it.
how many countries have you spoken in internationally at all?
Yes. Yep.
Where have you
So
been?
okay. So first was Canada, and then
That doesn't count.
London. Yeah, London, Paris, Finland. I think that's it for internationally. Next summer, June 2020, I'll be going back to Finland, which I am so excited about. The first time that I was in Finland was about no, November, let me think, November 2018, so about a year ago. And it was for that Global 100 Award. And so my husband and I just flew in through Amsterdam. We were in, and I gave the closing remarks on the first day for the opening keynotes. And then I did some mini sessions the next day. I think we had maybe one day to explore, and then we were back out. And we just fell in love with the country, the people. They just regard their educators like as high as doctors in their country. College is however much you can afford for college, that's how much you pay for, in college for Finland. The people are just so, their culture is so thoughtful. It was honestly the airplane ride from Amsterdam into Helsinki was like a library, so quiet. Their people are just so quiet and thoughtful before they speak or before they write, and they just think really like, is this something that's going to add value to the conversation? If it's not, I'm not going to say it. And so it was just amazing. We're going to get into some schools. I'm bringing I think 20 educators with me actually through a program called Book Bag Tours. I think it's called Book Bag Tour Adventures now, where I can actually bring 20 American educators with me into different countries, and they're going to see the school system in Finland. They're going to get professional development from me after the school hours, as well as the Finnish teachers will be coming to the professional development as well. And they're going to get to tour. They get to bring their families. I'm bringing my husband. And so we're really looking forward to it. And I think in 2021, I'm doing Germany, which I haven't done Germany before. So
Wow.
I'm really excited to see their school system as well.
Do they pay your expenses and all that to go to that? That's
They
great.
sure
Good for you.
do.
My friend Jen just went on a book bag tour last summer she's the it's so funny. She's the one who texted me. I texted you the other night and I said this friend of mine. My friend Jen who works outside of Albany she texted me the other. I woke up to this text. Basically it said I'm losing my mind right now. Like there's a couple kids in my class that I actually texted you that are mean. Like they're mean. Her words were mean girls. Like and she actually went on a book bag tour this summer to New Zealand. She went and she loved it. She said it was amazing. So really cool. By the way, have you ever had any mean kids in your class? Because you're like so nice and so sweet. But I got to imagine that you've had over the course of the years, you've had some type of challenging kids, correct?
I have, yes, 100%. I've had all sorts of kids who come into my classroom. In my TED talk, I actually talked about a child who I was preparing for school. I had my second grade classroom ready to go. The rest of my kids were already in the classroom that first day of school, doing something just, low risk, getting to know each other. And I was waiting for one of my boys to come in, and I thought like panic was setting in if maybe he went into the wrong classroom, maybe he's actually at a different school, I didn't know. And eventually, like, I just peeked my head out again, and I knew all of the kids' names for the first day of school because I had gone. We have a program called Power School here, so I could go and look at their pictures from last year so I could match their picture with their name when they came into my classroom because I just believe like the power of a name and saying a child's name when they first of all they don't even expect that you know who they are. So if you can greet them with their name, I think is really powerful. So I was waiting for Christian to come in, and he wasn't there. He wasn't there. I called the office and they said he checked into school. We've seen him here. We need to find him. And I looked out in the hallway and he was just standing outside the door. And he's at the time 7 years old. And I greeted him. I said, "Good morning, Christian. How are you today? Welcome to second grade. I'm so excited that you're here. You can find your locker, put your bag in. We're going to have a great day." And he just wasn't saying anything to me. He wasn't moving. And eventually he just said, "I hate school. I hate teachers. I don't want to be here." And I remember thinking, like, okay, this is going to be a challenging kid. I'm just going to just make sure he knows that this is going to be a different year for him, right? And so I said that. I literally said, "I promise you're going to love school this year." And I think he said something along the lines of like, "Make me," or "Good luck," or something. And eventually he came into the room. And slowly but surely, I just started to build relationships with this kid. And honestly, I talk about flexible seating, but even in a flexible seating keynote, I start and end with relationships because
Always.
you can have the best flexible seating in the classroom, but if you don't have relationships with those kids, I'm talking about not just surface level relationships, like authentic relationships where you are getting to know those kids outside of school. So Christian, for example, he was doing Taekwondo. And so I went to one of his events and watched him get his next color belt and found out all of the things that he likes to do at home and started incorporating that into our conversations. And we had lunch in the classroom multiple times. And I was eventually able to just de escalate him when he would be. We have zones of regulation in our classroom. So if he was in the red zone, angry or loss of control, or sort of when kids are in that flight or fight mode, I was really able to just, instead of getting a struggle with him, make connections with him. And sometimes he just needed me to just sit by him and not say anything. He just needed that presence, right? Or me to say, "I still love you no matter what you are doing, and that's not going to change. Like, no matter what you say or do to me, I will always love you, no matter what." Like, and helping them to understand that, I think really lowers the risk. They can be themselves. They can have a meltdown with me and she's still going to like me the next day. And I'm not holding a grudge against kids. Like, they get a fresh start every single day. And so I have definitely had my share of challenging kids for sure. And
Yeah.
I think more than ever, some of these kids, when they're having they're in the red zone or they're having a meltdown or they're having a hard time, lots of times what they honestly just need is someone to care for them, someone who's going to love them, someone who's going to be on their team and not fight them, right? I even think of one of my boys this in the last few weeks that was in my room, and he was in the calm down corner using all the tools and taking the breaths and meditating, and he was just still really worked up. And eventually I just said, like, "Buddy, can I just give you a hug? I feel like you just need a hug." And then he came in and he gave me a hug, and you could just see the stress melt off of him. So I think it's just really about building relationships. I love to share the story of Christian that actually didn't make the TED Talk, but I wish it would have. So that same boy, Christian, at the beginning of the year, who didn't want to come to school, part of his Genius Hour project, where they get to study actually what they want to study, based off of Google's 20% time. This is when 3D printers were like just coming out, really a big deal. Obviously, he couldn't afford a 3D printer, so he saved up his allowance money, and he actually bought off of Amazon. He bought a 3D pen, and so he was bringing it to school and doing all this, building all these things, creating all these things, and one day he actually 3D printed me an engagement ring, and he asked me to marry him.
Oh, man.
And so I really think like it's like full circle with some of these kids. And my heart always hurts when I think about a 7-year-old who hates school that much and he's 7. Like what
What's
happened? What had
happened?
happened?
Right. Right.
So
Or what is happening right now in that kid's life that's just making him so miserable outside of school that this is the
yeah.
place he takes it out. And I think sometimes that's what kids do. I tell
Mhm.
teachers all the time, like, when a kid goes off on you, you should feel grateful because it actually means that they value you and they care about you so much that you're their safe place to unload. I think all of us, I'll speak for myself, I don't know about you, but I think most of us in life, we take out our biggest annoyances, our biggest aggravations, and our biggest frustrations on the people we actually love and care about the most. Like there's times where, I'm in like not in a great mood or whatever, and and I'll just be busy all day and have a lot going on, and I have this smile on my face, and then I'll get home and my kid will be like, "Hey, Dad," and I'm like, "Watch your tone," and he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Just watch your tone. Like, I'm not in the mood." And he's like, "Wait, I just said hi, Dad." I'm like, "I know, don't be sarcastic." And then like 5 minutes later, I'm like, "Hey, come here. I'm sorry. Like, I didn't mean that. I was just tired and I was frustrated." And I think sometimes we catch the brunt of it from kids when it really has nothing to do with us. And one of my favorite lines is, if you can stay personally connected to kids without taking personally what they do and say, then you'll be able to stay in the right frame of mind during those moments, which I want to be clear, it's not easy. Like it's not easy when a kid is so upset or so annoyed to just sit there and take it. But if you can do that, and if you can withstand that, then almost always on the other side of that, good things happen. A couple of things I want to just ask you about that you kind of glossed over quick, but because I wasn't sure what they were. And so I want to make sure everybody else understands. You talked really quickly about, and forgive me if I don't get it exactly correct, zones of regulation.
Yes.
What can you explain that more, and just tell what exactly is that and how do you use it?
Yeah, so I started doing it. Well, I do like a few different things. So as you're a teacher, the longer that you teach, the more sort of classes you attend or the professional development you get. And so right away when I got hired, I learned about responsive classroom, and they have morning meetings. They have the calm down corners, lots of different things with responsive classroom that I do in my classroom, which is, I think, powerful practice. If you haven't looked up responsive classroom, highly recommend. My second job of teaching, I got training in what's called nurtured heart. And that has also been really powerful for kids who maybe have a harder time with directions or doing what you want them to do in your timeline, right? And so I even think about my own kiddos at home, and I think about my little boy, and in the morning before we're going to school, there's like 7 different things that he needs to do, right? And sometimes he's really fast and he's excited when he wakes up, and sometimes it's like sloth mode, so slow. And so even if it's like, I need you to go get a snack from the pantry to put it in your backpack, and of course I want it to happen fast, but even if he's, crawling on the floor or walking slowly toward it, I will say, I see you going to get your snack. Thanks for doing that, bud. So just calling out the progress, the good things that you're seeing, right? And so that's part of nurtured heart, as well as using the word reset with kids. And I think it can be triggering if you're using it in the wrong way, but I think in a safe classroom with low risks, where failure is accepted, we learn from failure, where kids love their teacher and they know their teacher loves them, I think it can be really powerful. So in my classroom, if I have a student who is maybe distracting himself or other kids, or not doing what is expected on our norms, or just needs to be back on track, ready to learn in the green zone, which I'll talk about in a second, you can use the word reset. And that just means like you get to stay where you are. There's no consequences here. I'm just noticing that you don't look like you're focused or you're ready to learn. And so I'll just come over to them and just say it quickly or quietly, like, can you reset, or you need to reset? And most of the time that solves a lot of problems. And it's just a gentle way of reminding them, hey, you're off track and I need you to get on track. And so if you don't need to be reset, you're in what's called the green zone. So there are 4 zones of regulation. And my kiddos in their school actually use it as well. So my own personal kids, I've been using it at home because their teachers at their school do it too. So basically there are 4 zones of regulation, and we're really trying to help kids be able to self-regulate. And I think, Brian, I'm sure you can talk all about kids being able to self-regulate their emotions. So I'm going to let you take it in a minute. But I think about lots of times when I greet my kids in the morning at the door and I ask, how are you? They either just say good or happy or sad or angry. Like there's like 3 or 4 things that they might say, when really they might be feeling overjoyed, or they might be feeling excited, or they might be feeling overwhelmed. And so we have the zones of regulation. It has all of the different emotions that you might be feeling. So green zone obviously is where we want kids to be. We want them to be happy, focused, calm, ready to learn. And so if you're resetting kids, you're hoping that they'll be in the green zone. Yellow zone stands for kids who might be anxious, a little loss of control, excited, nervous. Those would all be yellow zone. Blue zone is lots of different things. Tired, bored is one, sad. And then red zone is those kids who have maybe flipped their lid. They're angry, they're upset, they might be throwing things, they might be yelling, swearing. Red zone, you don't want to get to the red zone. You're hoping that you can help them see, oh, I see you're in yellow zone, or do you agree that you're in yellow zone right now? And I even have a boy this year who spends quite a bit of time in the yellow zone, and I'll even just say like, hey bud, you're looking a little yellow to me right now. And he's like, I'm feeling a little yellow. So helping them be able to identify emotions even with a color has been I think a good step in the right direction, because I think a lot of these kids are having a hard time with being able to regulate their own emotions. And I know with my own kids too, I do a lot of asking them, well, how are you going to solve this problem? What are you going to do about this when you're feeling this way? Because I want them to be independent. I want them to be able to regulate how they're feeling, right?
Yeah.
Without having me have to regulate it for them.
Yeah. I love that. You know, you're leading me into so many different strategies that I'm thinking about. Another strategy in general that I teach teachers is with really challenging kids to get in the habit of using questions instead of statements. I think teachers in general frequently use statements too often. I said
Mhm.
sit down versus, hey, come here, buddy. I have a question. Can you please explain to me why you think it's okay to stand instead of sit right now? Or like, that wouldn't be one in your classroom because they could stand probably anytime they want, but not always, right? Right? Not
Right.
always. I mean, depending on where that,
Right.
or like, instead of we don't talk to adults like that, it would be like, hey, come here, buddy. Where in your life have you learned to talk to adults like that? Like, who in your life talks to people like that way where you think that's an okay way to talk to me? Can you please explain that to me? Because I know that's not you talking in there. Who is that talking inside in there? Right? Like, so
Mhm.
when you turn it into a question, you take that battle away from a kid frequently, I
Mhm.
feel like, but
I
it's
feel
hard to do.
I think about even when I have kids in the calm down corner and I ask them, "Can you tell me what zone you think you're in right now?" And then I'll say, "What made you get to that zone? Like I missed it. Can you explain to me like what happened that you are in that zone?" And sometimes it's something that they bring from home. Sometimes it might just be something that happened in the classroom that teachers don't see because we don't see everything. And so asking them, "What zone are you in? What made you get this way? How can I help you get back to green?" And just asking instead of telling has been
Yes.
good too. So I like that you said that. I think that's a great strategy. And I also think too, I always come back to that relationship piece. So if there is a child who's yelling at me, and I know it's not personal. I know that what they're yelling at me, they don't really believe. I know that because I have that relationship
Yeah.
with them. And so I just need to keep my mind right, like level that it's not about me, and my job isn't to add to the crazy right now. My job isn't to add to the chaos of the situation. I need to be steady and not start crying when he calls me a stupid whatever or not, like just be steady. And it always wraps up with like, I love you no matter what. I don't love you less right now than I did 15 minutes ago. But there is like they will apologize, not because I say you need to apologize to me, but
Right.
eventually it comes out like, I'm really sorry that I said that. I didn't mean that. I was in the red zone. I'm like, I know you didn't mean that, bud. I
Right.
know how you feel about me. I know that you love me. And just going back, restoring that relationship before they go back to the work, right?
And
Has
in
been.
fact, I feel like if you do say you will apologize to me, that's like 101, don't do that. Like that's exactly the thing that you don't want to do, and our instincts want to do that frequently. My
Mhm.
rule is if you ever have to tell a kid to respect you, then you don't deserve respect. Like you should never have to tell someone in the world to respect you. Respect is something
Mhm.
that's earned, and I feel like most kids are looking to respect people. They're looking around, but for certain kids, just because you're the adult in front of the room doesn't mean I'm going to respect you. Like for other kids, it is. Like for a lot of kids in school, it's enough that I'm the adult, you're the kid, so I'm going to respect you. But for that handful of kids where it's not enough, and you go above and beyond. And so a question I wanted to ask you is, what do you say to people who say things like, okay, for example, like last year, my daughter who turned 5, both of her teachers came to her birthday party, which was
Mhm.
amazing, right? So they both come in, and it was like two rock stars walking in, right?
Mhm.
So all the little
Yes.
kindergartners are like, "Oh, our teachers," and they go over and they're hugging them. And what do you say to people who use the phrase like boundary issues, or like how far do you go when you build relationships, or I don't feel comfortable doing that? Because I get that a lot, and I always think of you when people say that, and I'm like, Kayla goes like a whole other level beyond where most people go. But and I say to reach people that no one else reaches, you got to do things no one else is willing to do. That's sort of what it takes.
Totally. So I think becoming a bonus mom, a stepmom, has changed me in huge ways. And that's only in the last 6 months. So I've been doing relationship building a ton. It's always been the foundation for me. But what I will say is looking at my own kiddos who go to school now and knowing that their teacher spends more time with them than I do is really hard. And also gives me a perspective that I didn't have before. And I just hope that those teachers are, first and foremost, loving my kids and giving them grace, right? Because they're going to learn the content. They will learn the content, but they won't learn the content if they don't feel safe first, right? Like all of those in education world, we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we talk about Bloom's taxonomy. And Bloom's taxonomy is all of the things about analyzing, and the very top of Bloom's is actually create. And of course, we want kids to be able to create, but we can't have them going through all of the Bloom's taxonomy if we haven't met their Maslow needs, which are just like shelter, food, love, sense of belonging, connection. And so
Yeah.
I look at my own kiddos going to school and hope that their Maslow needs are met, because I know that we're going to get to Bloom's, but they can't bloom if they don't have a teacher who's meeting their Maslow's. And so for me, it's always been about connection. And so when I get a birthday party invite, you better believe if I am in North Dakota, I am getting to that party, and I will talk to the parents. What are they? What size shirt do they wear, or what do they have this Lego set yet? Like, and I'm not saying you have to buy gifts for your kids. Sometimes just the presence of you being there is amazing. When we have skate city nights, we have school-wide skating events. Like, get to that. Let your kids see you as a human, not just a teacher, right? And be vulnerable with them. You bet, though. I've gone to birthday parties. I've gone to YMCA basketball practice on a
Well,
Saturday
did the
morning.
kids go to your wedding? Didn't you have your kids
Oh
were
my
they at your wedding? I remember
God.
seeing the pictures. I didn't ask you, but I was like, did her class go to her wedding? They were definitely in the
So
pictures, some of the kids.
not with my class, Brian. Like when I first got engaged to Dan, I talked about like we both said we're going to have a small wedding, like an intimate venue in Fargo, and then I told him, well, he actually proposed to me in my classroom, and so Dan and our whole love story has been a big part of our classroom, and so. I said, I got to invite these kids that I have this year. And he's like, well, if we invite those kids and those families, that's like 50 people already. And I was like, yeah, and since we already met that, like I need to invite last year's class, and then the fifth grade class is the first class that I ever taught at this school. And then sixth grade, I coached them for Lego League. Second grade kids I see in the hallway, I'm already knowing their names because they're coming to me next year. So he said, so we're basically just now inviting kindergarten and first grade. And I said, we can't just not invite the whole school in kindergarten and first grade, stay home. I said, we got to just, so we literally invited everybody. We had about 200 kiddos. We had a whole buffet for mac and cheese and chicken strips for kids, and we
Oh,
had a whole buffet for the adults. And it was amazing. It was amazing. And I honestly, that is the kind of relationships I think teachers need to have, is not just, my favorite TED Talk is by Rita Pearson, and she says kids
yeah.
don't learn from teachers they don't like. And I don't want to be the teacher that they don't like. I want to be the teacher even a step farther that they love. They can't wait to get to my wedding. They want to
Mm.
be able to see my family. They want to see me get married. They want to be there to help celebrate because I've been there to celebrate with them inside the classroom and outside the classroom. So I get their schedules, and I'm not saying I go to every basketball practice at the YMCA because I have my own kiddos
But
too. But I try, if I get a schedule, I'm going to a football game, or I'm going to a birthday party, or even 2 years ago, a parent that I'm still connected with from my time in Minnesota when I taught there, she said, our kiddos are coming. They're not even really kiddos, they're like teenagers now. They've graduated high school. They have a dance competition in Fargo And it would mean so much if you were in town, if you could come. And I happened to be in town, and so we surprised the girls. We totally pulled off this surprise, and they all marched out to do their dance routine. And they looked up in the audience, and I was sitting there with one of the moms, and the girl just cried. She was so overcome with emotion, so excited. 6 years later, even like she said, I can't believe you remember me. I'm like, of course I remember you. And I think that should be the standard, is that of course as teachers we're going to remember those kids because we've become a part of their life, right? And so I think it all just comes back to that Maslow part. We just have to meet their Maslow needs.
And I feel like if you do that, and for some teachers, I tell them it's okay if you don't want to do that. Like if you're busy and you have a lot going on and you don't, for whatever your reason is, look at it as an investment. Like see it as if nothing else, right? If you're one of those people that just kind of like, doesn't excite me to do that. Okay, fine. Then do it because it's going to be worth so much more down the line. When you go to a kid's event like that, or you're part of their life. And you know what else I've learned is that just by them knowing how much you value going to their events, it allows you to miss them. Like you can then miss them, and the kid's like, well, that's fine, Mr. Mendler missed because we know how much he cares about going. Like it's almost like they give you a pass sometimes. It's the same with privacy. Like one of the things that I tell my students is that I value privacy a lot, and I believe in dealing with people privately as best I possibly can. I always tell them I can't be perfect because there's like 25 of you and there's one of me. But that said, I value it a lot, and I'll do my best to correct you privately. And I also tell them I'll do my best to praise you privately. I think publicly praising people can sometimes be embarrassing to them as well. And, you know, but so the times where I'm not private, I almost feel like I get a pass because they know how much I value it. I tell them all the time, I value it so much. And so when I'm not, they're like, yeah, no big deal. You know, the other thing I wanted to just jump back to real quick that you said earlier, or that you said in your TED Talk that you didn't say on here, that I thought was a big thing, was you started the TED Talk by saying when that little boy came in and he said that your first thing you said in the TED Talk was, I got down to his level. And you didn't say that right now, which when you said that, yes, like it's a little detail, right? It's a little detail, but I feel like that piece of it, especially for elementary school kid who's kind of intimidated, not sure about being there, right? Don't you feel like that's a big thing that you did? Going to his level, below his level, I would say, right?
Yeah, so like I actually sat down and I just looked at him, right? Eye contact is huge. And one of my favorite recent follows on social media is Dr. Jody Carrington, and she's in Canada. She'd be amazing to have on your podcast. She talks about how getting their eyes is a huge way to connect, especially when kids are in trauma-based situations, or they flip their lid, is what she says. Getting their eyes, and so seeing them, getting their eyes when you're literally as high as they are, you're at their level, or even if they're sitting in the calm down corner or they're sitting up on a chair, I will literally sit lower than them on the floor next to them, but I will always get their eyes. And so I think like what you're saying is being at the same level or even lower.
Yes.
To me, I didn't even mention it because it's just so part of what happens. But I do think that maybe some new information for people. So I'm glad that
well, I think sometimes people forget. Like I think it's one of those things that most people know, but like in the moment, it's easy to just get lazy there, and that's not a place to get lazy. Like what I teach teachers to do is I say go to their level and then drop one notch below, because often when you look them in the eyes and you start questioning them about what's wrong, that can be intimidating to them. So you want to give them the physical proximity over you. Immediately give up the physical proximity. Let them have that. So they're looking down at you, because you looking at them upward and peppering them with questions and trying to get to understand them will be intimidation enough. So they get the physical, you get the emotional, is kind of what I tell people.
I think it also has to do with getting them back to green zone, to go back to those regulations, like whatever program you use, whatever names you want to call it, like just at least getting them back to a place where they can take a breath, they can feel safe, they can get back to what they're at school for, right? And it's just, people ask me, gosh, a lot of times on my social media, like questions that say, what's your best classroom management strategy? And I always write back like three words: a good relationship. Always. Because honestly, if your kids like you, not just like you, love you is what my goal is. And not all kids love me, but if they at least like me, you can really do anything in your classroom. It regardless of whatever system or program you use, just relationships with kids is
Well, the
by
bottom
far
line
my
is if you have amazing relationships, you have great lessons. You don't need a system. Like these systems
Mhm.
are a bunch of smoke screens. Like they annoy me because they get in the way. Like when you
Mhm.
start talking about and I don't know, maybe you use these, but when everyone starts talking to me about tickets and stickers and tiger bucks and behavior charts, and I'm like, yo, really? Like that's all a smoke screen. Like that's all taking your attention away from what actually matters, which is spending more time one on one with that kid, going to that kid's event. Like when you have to sit in your room and you have to think about that stuff, right? Like how many ticket sheets or how many points did I give out? There is brain cells wasted that could be spent in the right place. And it actually annoys me because when people act like the other thing is relationship building, we're sitting here talking about it. It's hard, right? It takes time, it takes work. It's not one of those things that gets created overnight, like in 1 minute.
Mhm.
Some of these kids that are difficult, it took them 7, 8, 12, 16 years to become the way they are. Nobody's going to
Mhm.
change that kid overnight. And so
Right.
sometimes I get annoyed because I feel like when they start introducing the external stuff, right? The I call them the bribes, right? When you start introducing that, you make it sound too easy. Like you're acting like it's easy. It's not. And teachers should be told that. They should be told, listen, this is a progression. This might, for certain kids, it might take you 4 months, five
Mhm.
months to connect to
Mhm.
that kid and to pretend like we're just going to give you a ticket and that's going to change your life overnight. It's almost insulting to people who
Mhm.
actually do it the right way. You're getting me all fired up. By the way,
I know.
when you kept saying calm corner, all I could think about was Willie Olson. You ever watch Little House on the Prairie when you were a kid? And Willie Olson
Yeah.
used to get sent to the corner all the time. That wasn't the
Mhm.
calm corner though, I don't think, in Little House on the Prairie.
Nope. Not the same.
What's in
Not the
your
same
calm
as the
corner, by
common
the way?
corner.
What do you have? What do you have in the calm corner?
Oh, lots of different things. So anything. So I've got timers for kids, like sand timers that they can watch drop. And so I have one boy who, if he has to calm down, they'll just go over there. They know, like, I'm in the yellow or I'm in the blue. And not all kids just go take a calming down time by themselves. Sometimes I'll say, like, I think you need to go calm down. Do you need to go calm down? Or I'll just say, you need to go calm down, right? Or you need to sometimes I'll just say, go take a lap, because some of my kids just need to just get out of the space for a little bit and take a lap. But in our corner, we have lots of different things. We have timers that some kids choose to use, which we know doesn't work for every kid because not every kid's going to be calmed down in 2 minutes. And I have different, like, fidget spinners, squishy balls, stress balls. I have like a weighted vest thing that some kids like to put on. Um, just a whole bucket of stuff that they can distract themselves with and release tension. Another really cool thing that we started doing this year, which actually has, I would say, eliminated a lot of calm down breaks for my kids, is teaching them meditation and mindfulness. And that's something that I learned when I was in Finland, is that they meditate every day in their classrooms. And of course, the first thing that teachers think, including myself, was like, I want to do that, but what am I going to take out to meditate with my kids for 15 minutes? And I slowly started just protecting that time. So 2 times in our classroom every day that are protected. The first one is morning meeting time, where we have a greeting. We greet every single kid by their name. I make sure I've greeted them at least twice by morning meeting. We have a share time where kids get to talk about their what it might be, a prompted share, it might be an open share. And you get to a point in your classroom when you're having open shares where you find out the hard stuff that kids are going through, right? I always say that these kids have more of a real world that they live in that I have ever known or will probably ever know, right? So you find out, like, oh, my mom didn't come home last night, or my dad's in jail, or our car didn't start and we don't have money for gas, or it might even just be something like my grandpa died, my cat died. Like, you give them a chance to talk about that, and when that happens, you allow other kids an opportunity to empathize with those kids, which I think is one of the most important things we can teach kids, is how to empathize with other kids. And
Mm.
so you'll find a kid that says, like, oh, my parents said that they're getting a divorce last night, and there'll be another student who comes up to them privately and says, my parents had a divorce and I'm here for you. I can talk to you about it. And literally, I'm talking about 7 and 8 year old kids creating that situation. And we have a game time or an activity where we work together, and then there's news and notes of the day. And so, morning meeting is a protected time. And now mindfulness is a protected time in my classroom too, and it's 15 minutes a day.
What do you mean by protected? Protected. What is it?
Protected, like no services are being pulled during that time. Even if we have a snow day and we're starting 2 hours later, we will start our day with morning meeting, even if it's 10:30 in the morning. So every day, kids know two things for sure are happening, even if we have all of the things that happen in elementary education with reading buddies and program rehearsals and services for pulling or
This stuff's the foundation. This is the
yes,
foundation
this
that we
is
build everything else on, and we do not mess with the foundation
we're
ever
not
because
ever going
we
to have something else there. This is happening every day. Read to self is a third pillar that we have every single day. And I'm not just saying like I give every single kid the same book, a time where they get to read what they want to read. So if they want to read about the UFC, they're going to read about the UFC, right? And so mindfulness, I'm going to go back to for just a minute. We do for 15 minutes a day, and we actually started using an app that's called Calm app. You've probably seen advertisements for it on your Facebook scroll or your Instagram scroll, but for teachers, it's actually paid for. And if you're not a teacher, I think it's maybe $59.99 for a whole year, but there's bedtime stories in there. There's meditation 101. Sometimes there's just a different profile. So like on my screen for the day, it might be like ocean waves rolling in. Like it's just amazing to teach kids how to meditate and to think about their breathing and how to get to that green calm space has also been great. And I found this last year that for my kids who they sometimes will say like, oh, this is so boring. Like that is the kid. It's hard for them. It's hard for them to sit and do it, right? And to be, just sitting there and literally working on just breathing. And so just having the kids do it has made a big difference in them being able to regulate throughout the day as well.
That's awesome. So I would be almost hypocritical if I didn't ask you about this when it comes to your teacher of the year. So I am notorious for talking about in my workshops that in general, I don't like things like student of the month. I'm not a huge fan of teacher of the year, of that kind of stuff. I'm not, and it's not because I don't think people are deserving. That's not why. It's because I think a lot of people are deserving. I think when
Mm-hmm.
you look around a school or you look around a state, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and I always say, how do you pick? Like, how do you end up
Mm-hmm.
picking? And my last year teaching was really funny. So I of course, didn't win teacher of the year. And I went to my principal and I said, how do you pick teacher of the year? Because I wasn't sure how they picked it. And I said, how do you pick
Yeah.
it? And he said, so he looks at me, he goes, oh, I don't pick it. And I said, oh, okay, well, who does? And he looked, and so I was teaching self-contained special ed at the time. And he looks at me, he goes, the National Honor Society kids vote. And I'm like, dude, they don't even know I exist. Like those kids literally did not even know that I worked in the school. But my question for you is with your teacher of the year and a lot of your
Mhm.
accomplishments, have you felt any type of, I don't know what the word is, like almost pushback, or you could call it jealousy from people? Like, have you, for example, I talked about this recently at a workshop in Nebraska, Omaha, and I had a lady come up to me privately. What I said was, I said, listen, if you're going to do teacher of the year, student of the month, I'm fine with that as a teacher, but don't do it publicly. Like, do it privately. Like, have a private little ceremony. Don't announce it at a staff meeting in front of everyone, because I think it's really easy for some people on that staff to get really annoyed with the winner. And so I
Mhm.
said that, and a lady in Nebraska came up to me. She goes, I was teacher of the year. And she goes, I felt exactly the same way. She goes, I had people from that moment on where I felt like I couldn't even talk in a staff meeting because I was a know-it-all and this and that. Have you felt anything like that?
So I think in my school, it's a small school. We're a really close staff, a really close community, and so I'm grateful in that way. That literally we have like two kindergarten teachers, two first grade teachers, one second grade teacher. So we just have sort of a smaller. We already started with a family feel, but I will say I know that that exists, and so you hear people say like, oh, don't worry about it because you can't be a prophet in your own land. And it's easy to be like, oh, I don't need to worry about it. But I think it's also you do need to worry about it because you are every day you're working with those people, right? And so, one recommendation, one suggestion that I have that I wish I would have had in my first few years of teaching, even, is just not everybody's going to like you. For sure, not everybody's going to like you, but in the end, like knowing why are you teaching? And for me, it always comes back to it's not about me. This is about my students. This is about giving them what they deserve, right? And so when you take that pressure off of yourself that this isn't about me, it changes a lot of perspective. When I actually got the University of North Dakota Sioux Award last year, it's at this big fancy gala, and I had the speech prepared, and actually one of the other honorees was Phil Jackson. So if you know anything about basketball, that's
Okay.
like a big deal for sports people. And I remember telling them, they said, you can have 20 guests. And I said, how many of them can be students? Because I wouldn't be getting the award if it wasn't for my students. And
Yeah.
so I think the less that we can make it about ourselves and the more that we can make it about our students, for me, that will always be a driving force. When I give
Yes.
keynote, sharing the stories of my students. When I'm writing books, I'm talking about my students and my stories. It's not about me. I didn't win Teacher of the Year because I'm the best teacher in my state or my school, even. I think that I was just the best choice for our state at the time. And that doesn't mean that I'm the best teacher. And I think that has been a good everyday reminder for me. Like just because I'm teacher of the year doesn't mean I'm the best at anything. Because you're right, you can sometimes the best professional development is literally the teacher next door
Yep.
or the person in the school district who you're like they actually deserve this. And I think it's just being humble, seriously being humble. And actually, the first thing that we did for Teacher of the Year, the National Teacher of the Year program, we meet together as a cohort about 4 or 5 times a year. And the first meeting was at Google headquarters. So I was geeking out, like taking pictures on the bikes, meeting all the people. And it was such a humbling experience because you hear the stories of everybody else. Literally, one of the teachers of the year is providing clean water and food for schools in Africa. I mean, I'm like, how did I get this when she's doing that, right? And so we talked a lot about imposter syndrome. And I'm not sure, have you heard of imposter syndrome?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so it's like when you are living a life that you feel like you don't know how you got that award, you don't know how you got this life, and you start telling yourself that you don't deserve it, right? And so you feel like an imposter in your own life. And I would say almost every single teacher of the year who was there was feeling this imposter syndrome. Why did I get picked? And I think that's the mentality that we all need to have is one from that mindset and not of course I won because I am the best because that makes it about you. That doesn't make it about kids. And honestly, we wouldn't have schools if we didn't have kids. You wouldn't have a job if we didn't have kids. So keeping the mindset where it needs to be. But you're right, it can definitely be a point of friction. And I think it comes down to the culture of your building and the culture of your school and the support that you have from families. My families have been amazing, excited, supportive. Having the support of families, having the support of your school, of your staff, of your students. And I think it just comes up to, showing up for those kids every day, showing up and not making it about yourself.
I mean, I've never heard it phrased that way, but I for sure have imposter syndrome myself. I mean, my whole life, everything I'm doing now professionally, I mean, how do I not, right? I mean, I sit here and I'm like, why me? Why is my podcast in the top 8% of all downloads on iTunes? Why is it the fastest growing in their education category? Why am I the one that they want to keynote a conference in front of 1,000 people? Like, I don't understand this. What did I do? Like, I was a special ed kid. I was a kid who has severe ADHD, who struggled with reading, and like, why do they want me? And why do I have like these two amazing kids? I feel like I feel like it's part of why I work so hard. Part of why I work so hard is
Mhm.
because I don't really believe that it's real, and I don't ever want it to go away. Like, I love it. I love this life, and I love getting. I was so excited this morning when I woke up because my daughter's like, "You're in such a good mood, Dad." I was like, "I know, I get to do a podcast," and she's like, "Why do you love that so much?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I love. You know what I love most about this? I love that back when I was when I finished college, I always wanted to do a radio show. So it's interesting. I always wanted to do. I always thought I'd be good on the radio, and people used to tell me that all the time. And but so I applied for like a bunch of radio jobs and a bunch of TV jobs, and I got denied from like all of them. And now I don't need anyone to give me a radio show. Like I can just have my own. Like this is technology. Technology has made it where, like I see some people on Twitter say things like, it's the same people all the time that are getting the keynotes. They need to give it to new people. And I'm like, you have a voice, people. Like you have a voice. Twitter is your voice. Instagram is your voice. Like start your own podcast, start your own YouTube channel. Like there's nobody stopping you anymore. The only thing that can stop you now in this world is laziness. It's the only thing. It's the same with learning something, right? The only thing that can stop you is that you just don't feel like doing it. Because if you know how to Google and you know how to use YouTube, you can basically, if you're patient and take enough Ritalin, you can figure anything out. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, it's the willingness to go and do it. And I think some people are more willing than others. The reason I ask you that question is because I get it. Like I get a lot of hateful things and mean things and nasty things. And I think sometimes in general, I think when you start to become a little, more successful or doing what you love more than anything, that's what I say. I say, like, I do what I love. And every time in my life that I worked to try to make money, I made zero. And when I started doing what I loved, just let me do what I love. Like when I started this podcast, everyone's like, well, are you going to make money? And I'm like, no, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to or not, actually, is the answer. But what I know is this: I can't wait to do it. And like, then once I start doing it, I'm like, how do people make money with podcasts? Right. So like, I'm interested in learning that part of it, but if you take all of it away, I love it. And I think if people can get in the mindset of just really doing what they love, then almost always all of this stuff works itself out and you'll figure it out. You're the best.
And doing what you love and also knowing you're not going to have every day be perfect. Like, and I know you've experienced this. Maybe you get done with the keynote and you're like, wow, that was not my best. Or you get done with the keynote and you're like, that was my best, right? Yeah. But knowing that not every day is going to be perfect, even when you do find what you love. And I think I have a few different facets of things, just like you do, that I'm doing that I love right now. I mean, I get to teach in a third grade classroom, which literally fills my heart and my soul and my cup up every single day. And at the same time, I get to give keynote speeches. I was in Kansas State University this last year, which I know you were at the year before, which is so crazy because I was mentioning you in my speech and they're like, we know him. He was here last year. And I'm like, shut the front door. What?
You're so there. And then North Dakota, like, I'm like, they love me in your state. Like, I don't know what I did there. I actually, you know what I did is I keynoted a conference for all the superintendents a year and a half ago. And that was it. And like, once that happened, I started getting calls to come in. In fact, Wayne, I'm forgetting his last name, but my friend Wayne, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a superintendent. He was in a bad fire back, this was years ago where he was burned as a fireman. Do you know who I'm talking about? So I don't know if you know.
So. I think so. I can't think of the name of the school he's at right now, but I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, but he was on. I had him on as a guest, and he told the story of just how he was burnt, basically fighting a fire. He was a volunteer fireman when he was a kid. He was like 22, and the truck ran over an exposed pipe, and it blew up the whole truck. And basically, he was burned, head to toe, and he lost his hands. And just how he told the story of just coming back from that, and how you basically have to relearn everything and the perspective that it gives you on life, and how the things that you think are important aren't, and the things that we worry about on a daily basis that we all get stressed about, you kind of look at them and you're like, when this happens to you and you realize you don't know how to pick up a fork after being a 22-year-old in the best prime of your life, and you go from that to, I literally can't use my hands anymore, like an amazing concept. But he's from North Dakota. So North Dakota and Kansas State. Yeah, both of them.
Yeah. And I think just not ever taking it for granted, that you get to do the work that you love. And it's funny because this is a conversation that I have with both my makeup artists for when I'm going out and doing shoots or interviews or things like that, and the lady who styles my hair. Like, they both love what they do. They're making a difference. They love their work. And it's so much more than hair or makeup. It's connections that they make with me. When they come to my house, they're bringing treats for my kids that they know that they like. Like, oh, I missed her birthday. Here's, just it's so much more than that. And it's
Yeah.
not because they're going to work. It's because they're doing what they love. And they can't imagine doing something different. And we always talk about every single time I swear it comes out, people who go to work who hate their jobs. They hate going to what they're doing. And I just can't imagine that life because I love teaching in my school, and that's not to say that every day is perfect because obviously it's not, or that every keynote is flawless because obviously we know that it can't be. But I think finding what you love and going for it. I went to school to be a teacher. I did not go to school to be an author. I did not go to school to be a professional speaker. Actually, I took speech in high school for college credit so that I could take it with 8 of my friends and not have to talk in a at University of North Dakota, not have to do it with 200 people in a
Yeah.
big auditorium because I hated speaking publicly. And it's
I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people think about us, about me at least, like I'll speak for myself as a speaker, is they think that I'm coming in telling everyone what to do, which couldn't be further from the truth. Like I always tell people, I'm this person who last year I worked in 146 different schools, 146, and I look at them and I say, you worked in one. So what I'm a bridge. That's all I am. I'm a bridge. I'm a person who comes in and says, you know what, guys, I saw this same exact situation last week in this school. And let me tell you exactly what they were doing that really worked with this kid. Oh, by the way, let me tell you what they tried that didn't work too. Like that's literally what I do when I go in. It's not that I have the knowledge. That's not what it is. It's just I get to see so many. It was this, by the way, it was no different when I taught special ed and I taught inclusion. When I taught inclusion, I used to go to like 6 different teachers in a day. I would go with the same kids. So I'd follow the kids, but I got good fast because I would watch these teachers teach and I'd be like, wait a minute. First period, they behaved perfectly fine for you. Second period, they were out of control for you. Same kids. What did this one do that this one didn't do? It wasn't me telling people, it was literally getting to see the difference. And I think people who are willing to take that on with an open mind, almost in general, if you can when you're sitting in a PD or you're sitting in learning from someone, you don't have to think they're the expert. That's not what we're trying to be in any way. It's simply a bridge from one place to another to give you information you haven't tried. That's it. Nothing else,
I totally agree. One thing that I say actually, especially if I'm in a room full of teachers, so a conference that I've done a lot happens in Las Vegas every summer, and it might be a whole room of
I know
second
that
grade
one.
teachers, yeah, or a whole room of third grade teachers, or the last 2 summers I've done the differentiated instruction strand, so I might have superintendents, technology coordinators, paraprofessionals, a whole room of regardless, the one thing we all have in common is we work with kids. Like we work with humans, no matter the age. You're working with students, right? And so, one of the first things I say that I think honestly diffuses a lot of people who might have that mentality, that mindset, that those walls up, is that just because I'm up here with the microphone, with the clicker, doesn't mean that I automatically know more than you do. And actually, I'm going to be asking you for input today. I'm going to be asking, what are some things that have worked for you? What are some things that haven't worked for you? Because everybody in the world can teach you something. So
Always.
Brian, you meet my little boy Kieran, he's going to teach you 100 things in the first 5 minutes because that's how fast he moves, right? Age has nothing to do with how much somebody can teach you. And so I think when you go in there, you go to that event as a speaker and just say, for me too, I just say like, I can't wait to show you what happened in my classroom yesterday because they see it and they see, oh, she's doing this. This is a real thing that she has experience with. She's not just saying, we think
Yeah.
that you could do this. Like both of us have real experience with what we're talking about. And so
Yeah.
it's not fake, it's authentic and just diffusing and saying like, I don't know everything. Like I don't have the answers to everything, but I bet somebody in this room has some experience with that and we're
Correct.
gonna find an answer today.
And the other thing I used to teach my students, this will be, we got to wrap up after this. They try to hold me to an hour with these podcasts. I could go all day. I truthfully could. I could just do this because I love doing this. But is I used to teach my kids, especially my middle school and high school kids, I used to tell them, listen, some of you guys want to make money in your life and you want to get rich. And I understand that. And I would say to them, so let's yell out some professions that you can get rich at. And they would always yell out the ones everyone thinks of, right? Like doctor and lawyer and an athlete and an actor and rapper and YouTuber and musician. And what I would say to them is false. It's actually not true. The truth of the matter is you can make a ton of money in any profession if you get to the top. And I don't care what that profession is, if you are the best. And if you choose to decide that whether you want to be an electrician or a plumber, I have a friend who's a pilot, okay? And he flies for a private family, this billionaire family. They pay him $425,000 a year. He's a pilot. You don't make that on United Airlines or on Delta, okay? But he's the top. And now he's on call and he works a lot, but he's making a crazy amount of money doing what he loves, flying airplanes, doing what he loves. If you can get to the top and you can make that your mindset, whether it's you're wiping a table at McDonald's, you're pushing in your chair, you're taking this quiz, you're doing this homework assignment, do it the best you possibly can. Do it at a really, really high level. And if you can get that into your mindset, your life will take care of itself. You agree with that?
I totally agree, and I would be sad if I didn't talk about my faith through this whole thing. So, my faith is the number one reason that I do everything that I do, and I thank God for every single blessing, and it's no accident that I didn't go to school to be a speaker, and that's what I do now because God had that in my plan before I literally laughed at that. I'm not doing that, right? But I think part of being faithful, part of being obedient, no matter what your spiritual journey is doing the very best that you can in this day, in this moment. And when you do well at that, then you're going to be given more responsibility at another level. But I don't think that you're going to get moved to the next level if you're not being obedient, doing your best work in the day to day, no matter what that means, and no matter what your job is right now. If you're listening to this, doing the very best every single day, choosing to do your best every single day. And I think that's totally my journey, is just showing up and doing my best no matter what stage I'm at in my life. But I'm also a lot like you, I think, and not fully ever like I want to keep like, what's next? Maybe I do need to do a podcast. That's why I'm Mrs. West Fargo International right now. My North Dakota Teacher of the Year is running up, and I want another platform to be able to share about kids and relationships and power of connection in my state. And so I'm running for Mrs. North Dakota, and that's not ever something that I thought I would be doing, and here I am doing it. And so I think that's maybe something that successful people do too, is just doing your best with what you have right now, but always thinking and being open to what might be next in your plan, even if it's something that you never ever saw coming. Right.
Correct. And embracing that. Like I think some people in life get annoyed at not knowing, but if you can embrace the journey, right? Embrace the journey of trying to figure things out. Embrace the journey of wondering how something's going to work, right? Even if you don't know or you're not sure, just embrace the fact that, oh, well, even if I fail, so what? Like, that'll be fun too. What can I learn from failure? And just understanding that everything you do all the time is a work in progress. And it's the same all the way. Like, you're I think my 28th episode now, or 29th episode that I've done on here, which is crazy. Every Monday they come out, and when we first started, like, the audio was bad, and I didn't have a backdrop, and I wasn't promoting it on social media at all, basically. And again, like, every week we do one, and then we look at it and we say, okay, how do we make it a little better? Not great. Like, we're not trying to be perfect yet. We're just trying every time. Just make it a little better. Just make it a little better. Just make it a little better. And listen to the feedback. What do people like? What don't people like? And just continue to just be a work in progress. And I feel like in all aspects of life, if we can do that, usually, usually if nothing else, we're happy, which is really the ultimate goal, right? The ultimate goal is to be able to wake up every day with a smile and to enjoy life. And I see you doing that. And I love that you're doing that. And I'm so happy for you. And I actually, one of these years, you talked about that conference in Vegas. I'm always out there the same time. I do the National Conference on School
Yeah.
Discipline, and it's always the same time as SDE, which is the one you were talking about that you do. And so one of these times we have to get together and at least have dinner. I want to meet your husband too. I definitely want to meet him. Hopefully my wife actually sometimes comes to that one. She doesn't come to many things, but she comes to that one sometimes. So maybe we can all four get together and hang out. That would be really cool, wouldn't it?
That is literally one that Dan comes to out of, I mean, he's a
I know.
pastor and he has like 5 Sundays off a month or a year, and that is one that we are like, you're coming.
I
So
love
that
how
would be
proud he is of you. He's so proud of you, and he posted that, and he posted back when last year you posted a picture on that stage, and it was a monster crowd. I mean, it was a huge crowd, and like you could barely see you, and he had like this arrow pointing to you, and you couldn't even see you, but it said, "That's my wife," and like he must have been in the back of the back corner, and I was like, that's so cool that he does that, and it's great.
he's so
Well, listen,
supportive.
what we're gonna do. So, you probably don't know about this, but I have a paid subscription service called Mendler U, which is through my website. My website's brianmendler.com, and if you go on my website brianmendler.com for $5 a month, you get access to all of my videos, everything. So over 70 professional development videos. The other thing that I do is I do bonus segments of with every guest that we post to Mendler U. We have it's up to about 300 subscribers right now, and it's continuing to grow, which is really great. And would you mind if we do a couple questions? So we're gonna end this, and then we're gonna just do a quick couple questions that we'll answer for Mendler U people. Sound good?
Sounds good.
You're the best, Kayla. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate you so much, and I can't wait to catch up in the future. Sound good?
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Of course, you're the best.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, go. So tell. So yeah, they came with you to Minneapolis. How'd that go, by the way? Did that go well?
Yes, so we had my friend Gary Brooks and I are starting it. It's a new conference called Uplifting Education, and basically we just want people to come, celebrate, laugh, learn, cry with us, and leave like uplifted with a little call to action as something that you can try in your classroom. So since it was in Minneapolis, I told Dan, of course Dan is coming because it's just 3.5 hours away. I also flew my mom in to help with Oregon. From Oregon, she came and she helped work. I have this section on my blog called the Top Dog Shop, and it has lots of shirts with things that I say in my speeches or in my blog. And so she ran the shirt shop, and she did the square swiper for everybody. And I also wanted my kids to come because at ages 7 and 9, they know I'm out there working. I'm in Kansas City, I'm in California, I'm in New York, whatever it might be. They know that I'm not home and that I'm working, but I don't think they really understood what I was doing, Right. So they actually came and they saw the people lined up to take pictures and me signing books and me up on the stage speaking. And
So awesome.
One of the questions that we got, actually, we had a question and answer panel towards the end, and my friend Greg Smedley Warren, he was actually the featured speaker this time, and he'll be actually joining us next time too. We were all three up on stage for the question and answer, and somebody in the audience said, how do your families handle this life of speaking and traveling and working and writing? And my kids were there, and they both came up on stage, and it was amazing. But you have to have this family support, right? And for me, it was really important for them to see what I really do, because they dropped me off at the airport, they picked me up at the airport, and I want them to know, like, I'm doing this because I love this, because it's a passion, and it's something that I care a lot about. So it was really cool to have them there.
That's awesome.
Really cool.
The one of the things that helps me, that's so nice for me having John, is I don't talk money ever. So it's that's probably, I'd say, the best thing about the whole thing is anytime, anywhere I am, someone says, what's it cost to bring you in? My answer is always, I don't know. Now, of course, I know. Let me be clear about that. Like, I know exactly what it costs to bring me in, but I say I don't know. And the reason what I tell people is I just do the education part. I don't do anything else. So you got to talk to other people, and they handle the business end of me is handled by someone else. And it's actually very freeing for me because it allows me to just separate myself from any type of, financial negotiations or figuring out like if they're going to buy books and what kind of discount we're going to give them. And, and he handles all of that, which is like been so nice for me to have. So I love having an extra person. So it's a
He's
buffer,
great.
so to speak,
Yep. He's great.
All right, so let's do this. So here's what we do now. So basically, so you didn't know about Mendler. A lot of people don't know about it. It's great. I don't advertise it. So this is really cool. So it's this thing I started. It was John's idea. He's like, everyone's doing subscription services now. That's like at Disney Plus, ESPN. People are sort of used to that. He's like, let's do a Brian Mendler one. And I was like, well, are people going to actually pay for me? And he's like, well, let's see, right? It's one of those things we were talking about on the last one. Let's see. Why not throw it out there? We basically have all these. I don't know if you ever see on social media, I do these 30-second PDs, right? Where I do like basically just one top, and he's like, we'll put them all in one place on here. And that way people can just go there and they can just access them anytime they want. And so we started doing this. I told him, I said, I'm not going to promote it. Like, I don't want to like sell it. The only place I promote it is on the podcast. It's the only place I talk about it, which I'm going to start talking about it at my workshops coming up. I just haven't yet. But it's great. So we do these questions on there, and the one was the mean girls. So I just wanted to give my take on this, and I think you were sort of going there as well. You ended up talking about the student, which was great, but the relationship is the key. And what I always say is, if you have a group of anybody, right, whatever the thing is, whether it's that they're mean, whether it's that they're talking too much, whether it's that they're disrespectful, inappropriate, whatever the thing is, if you're dealing with a group, the goal is to find the leaders of that group and figure out which are the ones, so to speak, where if I can cut the head off, the body will go away with it. And it's like, I think sometimes feel like the teachers feel like they're playing metaphorical whack-a-mole in a classroom, where sort of like they knock down one behavior and then they look over here and then this one pops up. And I always say, if you feel like you're playing that, stop playing for a second and instead just look for the one. Who's the one that's sort of the kingpin? Or there might be two, and then metaphorically just stand over them. And every time the other ones pop up, don't even look. Just stay focused. And when I say stay over them, it's connecting more. It's getting them so connected to you that they wouldn't dream of being mean because of how much it would disappoint you. It's literally. The work isn't trying to get them to stop being mean. That's not the work. The work is, how do I connect them to me so tightly that the thought of disappointing Mr. Mendler is enough right now, where I would never choose to behave this way. Does that make sense?
100%. And we talk about when I have a child who is de-escalated, and I'm doing kind of like that debriefing with them, we oftentimes, I say, I know that you love me and I know you don't want to hurt my heart. I know that you didn't mean to hurt my heart, but when this situation was happening, like, it did hurt my heart to hear that and to see such a loss of control for you. Like, I don't want you to have the situation again, right? It's just that empathy piece, and having that those kids who literally love you so much that is the consequence. That is, for those kids, letting you down would be the highest consequence for those kids. So I'm 100% with you on that.
And then I think the other piece of that is looking at the root of it. Like, where is it coming from? Is it a power and control thing for the kid? Is it a kid who, when you look at their home life might be so out of control that they come to school and they decide, I want to exert control over others. So what does that look like? Oh, I know. I can influence these 3 other girls right here. I can get them to be mean to that kid, and look at how much power and control that gives me in my life. Because really somewhere else in their life, they're not getting that power and control. So if you can see it like that and then start to set up ways in your classroom to give that kid power and control, maybe have them sit with you and help you figure out what the next book is going to be that you're going to read as a class. Maybe have them sit with you and, say, okay, well, we're done reading the book. Are we going to do these questions, or these questions? Which one? Why don't you guys create the questions, right? Do you have any examples or any ideas of how you could give a kid power and control to involve them in decision making?
Totally. So we do a ton of student-led learning and teaching in our classroom. Literally, the mission of our classroom, which is in huge letters on the very front of the room, is everyone's a teacher, everyone's a learner. So the more that you can get kids doing all the things, really, I mean, from setting up the calendar to um, running a coffee cart for your school, to greeting at the door, to writing the message, changing the schedule. We also have in my classroom, just you go to these conferences and you get a lanyard, right? And so I have tons of different lanyards, and on the badge it says Ask Me. So I'll just choose those kids who need to be leaders, and I'll have them be Ask Me kids. So, and also for me, selfishly, maybe smartly, I'm not sure, it saves so much of my time from those questions that I don't need to be answering, because those student leaders can answer those questions about Wi-Fi, about volume on an iPad, about sharp pencils. Where's a sharp pencil? Like, don't come to me with those questions because I'm trying to teach guided reading right now. So go to those Ask Me kids. Or if a question is hard on the math page, have you asked an Ask Me kid yet, or did you just come straight to me for help, right? So give them those opportunities. One thing that I also love to do, specifically in this situation where it sounds like we have some kids who maybe are being bosses. So there's a T-chart that we make, the difference between a boss and a leader, right? And they can be similar. They can be closely aligned with just some small changes, right? So leaders are people that we look to for guidance, that are, making great choices, who are consistently following our norms, where bosses are just people who want to tell other people what to do, right? They're worried about other people's business. They're not worried about their own business. So that's something that you'll hear me say in my classroom to kids privately is like, are you being a boss or are you being a leader? What's your hope here, right? And so making them see the difference, helping them see the difference maybe between being a boss and being a leader. And I'll also tell kids, like, if you want to be a boss or if you feel like you need to be a boss, just work on being the boss of you. Like, just take care of being the boss of you and making the right choices for you. And so that has been a pivotal moment, I would say, this year, is just helping them see the difference between being a boss and being a leader, right? And then also making sure that all kids know that you believe they are leaders. Every kid is a good kid. I say that every kid is a good kid. Every kid wants to be a good kid. No kid wants to be a bad kid. There are no such thing as that, right? So helping kids know every kid's a good kid. Every kid is a leader. I love all kids. Helping them know and believe those things has made a difference for me.
Gotcha. That's great. And then the last thing I want to touch base with you on, I know when I texted you this, you wrote me back and said that's a tough one. It is. But what about transition? So I get this a lot, though. It's transitions seem to be difficult for people in a lot of areas. It's sort of like when we finish one thing, getting them to go from that to get started on the next thing. You got any like quick tips for people for things that they can just either at least look out for or work on to try to make their transitions go a little bit smoother? I'll just start. One of the ones that I teach people is to teach through your transition. So I think one mistake some people make is like they stop one thing and then they go to something else. And if you ever watch TV, right, it used to be when a TV show would end, the commercials would come on, the credits would roll, commercials would come on, then the next episode of something else would start. That's not how they do it anymore. The way they do it now is one episode ends, they start the next one right then, right? The next episode of Law and Order begins right now. Like, they don't wait. And the credits are even rolling down here while the next episode is starting. And then they go to commercial. It's sort of like they get you hooked first on something else, and then they break mid that thing versus between the two things. Make sense?
I love that. Actually, that is an amazing metaphor that I had not thought of before that I am going to be using. So thank you for that.
No
I also think about whenever my class is struggling, like as a whole class, with something, let's say it is transitions, talking about it, like literally talking about it with them instead of fighting against it. So saying, like, I'm really hoping that we can be done with math stations and starting STEM within 90 seconds. How can we make this happen? And we'll set that as a monthly goal, and we keep track of it. How many times have we met the goal and how many times have we not? And so that has also been, I think, a good practice for me, is just helping them take control and ownership of that, so that I'm not fighting with them about it, but just saying, like, how can we do better as a class? And then the goal changes every month, maybe, and literally writing the goal with them. Like, this is something, and sometimes it's something that I know that we need to work on, and sometimes it might be something that they say they need to work on. One that we're doing right now is actually the amount of time it takes for us to get all of our winter gear on, because in North Dakota, we have a lot of snow. And so sometimes I will set a timer on the board for, like 3 minutes. Sometimes that's our goal and we just keep track. Like it took 3 minutes. Oh, it only took 2 minutes and 30 seconds this time, or it took, 1 minute. But just working on it together, I think it is a great, just making sure everyone's on the same page can be a
And
great
then
way to get started.
And I'm guessing within that, then you then will potentially have leaders. So then you can kind of pull a
Mhm.
couple kids aside. And by the way, you guys are amazing at this. So when you guys are done, can you help them get their gloves on? Or hey, come here,
100%.
you those two, they listen to you, but they don't listen to me. So can you help her get her boots on? Because if you tell her, she'll listen, but if I tell her, she won't. Like that kind of thing. Again, power control, right? So you're constantly finding ways to give that kid the power and control in times where they're not even desperate to have it, which means in general, hopefully they'll be nicer all the time.
Yeah, that's a true statement.
Yeah.
But I think just being transparent with your kids. There definitely last year were some months where I didn't. I said, "What do you think is the goal that we need to work on this month?" And sometimes it might not be something in the classroom. Sometimes it might be something that we could do outside of the classroom better, like um, manners or saying please and thank you, and keeping track of that even in the lunch line. Did most people say thank you? Did most people say please? So, and they might say that. They might say like, hey, we need to do better at this. Or the lunch lady might say like, your class was kind of loud when they came
Yeah.
in, and that's where it comes from. So, but I think just
I love how you do this, and I love how you. So the other thing that I get when like I would say to groups to do that, what again pushback that I would get is, well, my whole class doesn't need it. My whole class doesn't need to work on please and thank you. And I always say, but it's never bad for them to hear it again anyway. Like, so even if they don't quote unquote all need it, like, so you're doing it
Mhm.
maybe because 4 of them do or 5 of them do, but them all getting that is never a bad thing, right?
No, and that's what I tell parents too when we look at a report card and one side is, the standard based academic things that they're learning and the other side is like social skills, behaviors, um, soft skills is what people call them, but really they're like just human skills, people
Right.
skills that you need to be able to work with other humans. Like the academic side is important, but for me as a mom and a teacher, or like my kids call me a teacher mom, literally, what I want is for kids to have those soft skills to be kind humans. Like, I don't care how smart you are, if you are going to be a mean person, you are not going to make it far in life. You need to learn how to be a good, kind, thoughtful, generous, empathetic human before you can do anything with what you've learned. And I think the more we can get teachers on board with teaching those social skills, those Maslow skills, it's just not only going to benefit your class and your school, but it's literally just making a better world because those kids
Yes.
grow up and they become humans of society, people of society in our lives. So I think that is just it's key. It's important.
It's the thing I one of the thing I tell teachers who are really struggling, like if I'll get a message from someone who's like, I want to quit, I hate this profession, I'm ready to lose it, I'll tell them, I'll say, do me a favor for 1 week, focus on nothing but manners, make manners the only thing, lesson plan for manners the same way you would lesson plan for math, science, ELA, or whatever else you're trying to do, and make that your foundation for 1 full week, and like work on please and thank you, work on good morning, work on nice to meet you. I mean, last week alone, I worked in 3 different cities and I had a total of probably about 600 people all together. And I say people, last week alone, I probably said good morning to strangers maybe 100 to 200 times in the week. I needed to
Mhm.
know the causes of the Civil War by heart, not once. There was not one time last week where and by the way, if I needed to learn them, which I didn't, but if I did, I have this really cool thing called a phone. And I got this app called Google. And in like 5 seconds, I can have a laundry list of, again, no, I want to be clear. I'm not saying those things are not important. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is sometimes I think we forget what is most important. And I don't think
Mhm.
we should ever forget that. And if you can decide, I'm going to compete right now to have the most well-mannered kids in this building, it turns your focus as a teacher, and it literally makes you focus on those things and trust that by doing that, you'll get to everything else you need to get to during the year.
And at a faster pace, at literally a faster pace. That is something that people ask me is like, it will be September and they'll say, but you haven't started your math curriculum. You haven't done like lesson one yet. Aren't you worried you're behind? And I'm like, I'm not at all worried that we're going to be behind because we are taking so much time to get to know each other, to build relationships, to learn together, to play together, to have failure together, to learn about the expectations of the classroom, we're gonna be just fine. And we always
Do
are just fine, but
do
you
you
have
not
to take
do you
the
not
time.
touch the content? Do you not touch the content for that long? Like, do you not? I mean, with certain
A
kids or
while.
certain classes?
A while. It depends on the class. It depends on the classroom, but I truly think like they're not going to learn a single thing from you if they don't have a relationship with you. So we spend responsive classroom takes the first 6 weeks to learn your kids. And then you begin. So I'm not saying I always take 6 weeks, but I am saying I take a while before I start really digging into that curriculum. And I would say I feel like I'm hitting my groove maybe around like October 1st, where we know each other, we're learning the content, we're in our routine, we're in our schedule, and I'm feeling good. But it's usually not until October where I'm feeling really good about we're really rolling together as a class.
I just want people to hear that because you do this every day and it's your focal point and you're still not really comfortable till October, which means if you're not doing this every day and it's not your focal point, this thought process that you would have these connections earlier than that is crazy. It's a totally unrealistic expectation. And we have
Yeah.
unrealistic expectations. Those can be extremely detrimental to people, you know? So, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, listen, thank you so much. This was so much fun. I'm gonna let you go. I could just hang out with you all day, but you know,
I
I got my kids
know.
upset. I hear my kids. They're coming up and down. They haven't come in yet. Sometimes they actually come in. They haven't come in yet, but anyway, what do you got
So,
today? You got anything good today? What are you guys doing?
yeah, we're going to Frozen 2. Our kiddos are so excited. So we're taking them at 5 o'clock to the show. And this afternoon we have at our church there's a big bazaar going on today. So Dan and I are both going to go help out at that a little bit. So it's kind of a full day, which is good. Our Saturdays usually are. So
I
it's
just
good.
I
We're
just
excited.
I just heard a little bit of the North Dakota accent that I haven't heard the whole time. So
Oh
have you put it
God,
away? Have you like worked to put it away? Because usually they're North Dakota, right?
I
North
know.
Dakota. Hey
I
Brian,
think
North
the more
Dakota.
that I've traveled, the better I am about not sounding like that. But also, when I did my TED Talk, I had a speaking coach for like months and months and months, and she really helped me how I'm sounding. I think just the more I travel too, the less I sound like I'm from North Dakota, probably. So
Well,
it's
everyone's
funny.
got their thing, right? Everyone's got their thing. I mean, when I go to the South, they're like, "Hi, Brian," and I'm like, "Actually,
Yeah.
my name's Brian. It's not Brian. There's not like six syllables in my name. There's one, Brian." And they're like, "No, it's Brian," and I'm like, "It takes y'all an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes." Like everything in the South is slow. Like they all got their
Yeah.
thing, right? And I say that lovingly, like because I one of the things I love about this job is everywhere you go in the country, it's cool. Like every place, everyone's like, "What's your favorite place?" And I'm like, I don't really have a favorite place because everyone's got their thing, right? When you go, like when I was in North Dakota and I went to the arena there at the University of North Dakota, and you know, you and John that works for me have a
Yeah.
connection because right, he's really good friends with Dane Jackson, who's their assistant hockey coach, and but so when I went there and I'm like, I can't believe how much they love college hockey and like how they sell out that arena and how amazing that arena is. And like, that's what they wanted to take me to when I was there and I had extra time. They were like, we're going to go see the hockey arena. I'm like, you don't get that at other places. There's no
You
place,
know.
other place I've ever gone where they're like, I want to take you to the college hockey arena. And you're like, cool, you know, but I feel like every place you go has something like that. And every place has good food. That's the other thing. If you're, people are like, what's the
Yeah.
best food? And I'm like, there's no best food. It's you just, wherever you go, you tell them, take me to your place. What is your place here that you guys go to? And then you get the best of everybody's food.
We love it. I know. That is one of the best parts and worst parts. Sometimes I just want like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you aren't going to get that when you're
I
in a
know.
hotel, you know?
I
It's the
know
best
about that.
part.
Yeah. No,
Awesome. Okay.
I tell them very clearly when you bring me in, I say, I don't want Subway. I'm like, don't, I'm kind of a snob about it, but I'm like, if sometimes I'm only going to be there once. And if I'm only going to be there once, like do it right. Like show me what you guys got in your town, you know? And usually they do when you approach it like that. So
I don't
pretty
want
cool.
Subway.
Right. I'm actually looking at my calendar. I'm already booked 3 days in August in North Dakota again. Is that
You
crazy?
are? Where are
Yeah,
you
it's
going?
nuts. You know what? It's covered right now. I can see
Okay.
ND 2 times, but and I know there's a third one. I don't know where they are. I'll tell you though. I'll text you where it's going to be.
Yeah,
But
let me know where
crazy.
you're going
I
to be and
know.
when you're going to be
I
there.
know. I will. Hey, listen, it was awesome talking to you, Kayla. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
It's great
Thanks
to
for
see you.
having
I
me.
can't wait to see you, give you a hug in person.
Yeah, I know. You too. Okay, we'll see
Bye.
you later.
I'll give you a virtual hug. There you
All
go.
right. All
Virtual
right.
hug.
I like it.
See you,
Okay.
Kayla. Bye. Good to see you.